So the Panthers offense as a whole was just pretty much horrible last year. And as it was led by Bryce Young, he had one of the worst rookie seasons in recent NFL history. Some of it was on him, of course, but a lot of it had to do with piss poor coaching and play calling, the lack of protection up front as he was sacked 62 times, and just an inability on the outside for wide receivers to create separation and get open. So when things go that bad, heads are going to roll, and that's exactly what happened as the head coach and general manager were both relieved of their duties. So with new blood at the helm, it appears that they're trying to right all the wrongs of their predecessors and put something around Bryce Young to help him facilitate his success, and they don't care whose feelings they hurt.
Measure, like, really take a good, honest look at that, position by position, and challenge it. Challenge the roster in the draft, challenge the roster in free agency, and I'm not afraid to say that. And that should always be true, so that we never get complacent, with the guys that we have, although we love them, although we're excited about them. And I'm still learning, the Carolina Panthers as I've been watching film. Now, I have the benefit of not having the emotional connection to a lot of these guys, so I can come in objectively and just say, that's good enough, that's not good enough. And I don't want to get into specifics about who I'm talking about in that regard, but that is my advantage right now. So I just come here with really an open mind for how to improve our roster, before I have all these relationships that I built.
I mean, they've revamped the offensive line by already spending over $150 million in contract value on 2 guards. They traded away Brian Burns and pretty much received a second-round pick, and they're expected to take a wide receiver in what is one of the most deepest classes that we've seen in some time. They went ahead and made a low-cost trade with the Pittsburgh Steelers and acquired Deontay Johnson, and they're still not done because, according to reports, they have scheduled meetings with even more free agent wide receivers. What does this mean for the current wide receivers on the roster? Mainly last year's second-round pick, Jonathan Mingo. So the last regime for the Panthers chose him at the 39th overall draft pick, the first wide receiver chosen in that second round. And they did this in hopes of giving their young quarterback that they took #1 overall, a young wide receiver to grow and develop with over the years. And as I previously said, that GM and head coach are long gone now, and they've been doing all they can now to right all the wrongs of their predecessors. I talked about all the changes and feelings. Bradley Bozeman, who was a community staple and just signed a 3-year contract last offseason, was released. The same thing with Hayden Hurst, who was 1 year into a 3-year contract he signed last year. He was let go as well. Whenever you see teams getting rid of veterans early in their contract without much salary cap relief, they're trying to really turn the page and retool. I mean, you can even see that with the Brian Burns trade, as they only got a second-round pick and a late-round pick when his value was so much higher than that. It feels like they just wanted to kind of be done with it and wipe their hands because the prior regime had kind of fumbled the bag with the whole situation. It was clearly obvious they're not shy about moving on from old things. So let's look at the current wide receiver room now for how Mingo steps up. Of course, we have Adam Thielen. They just signed Amir Smith-Marset to another 1-year deal. Terrace Marshall Jr. is still hanging around going into the last year of his deal. And they just acquired Deontay Johnson. As I mentioned, I fully expect them to draft at least 1 wide receiver. I would even double dip if I were them. And of course, that leaves Jonathan Mingo. If they add another vet that they've been inquiring about, that leaves a crowded 7 wide receivers in that room. So where does Jonathan Mingo fit in? I don't expect him to be cut or traded like some of these other guys that I mentioned previously, but it's no secret that his rookie year was underwhelming. A lot of that had to do with just the offense as a whole being bad, but it's just hard to see and put things in perspective when second-round draft pick wide receivers chosen after him did much better. Like Rashee Rice, who was a staple for the Kansas City Chiefs as they won the Super Bowl. Jaden Reed was a constant playmaker and touchdown maker for his other team. Tank Dell ended up with CJ Stroud and had a phenomenal rookie year before he got injured. And the list goes on and on as you go deeper into the draft. And of course, situation and environment means everything, but early on, he struggled with some of his blocking, which they really wanted to lean on him about because of his physical buildup. And of course, he just had some awkward moments overall in the receiving game where just left you with some head scratchers. But it wasn't all bad because he did show some flashes of being able to get behind secondaries, and Bryce Young flat out missed him on several occasions. So I personally feel like the book may not be written on Jonathan Mingo, but with all these moves being made, they're not going to sit around and wait to find out what he's about, because I'm not so sure they would be so aggressive about retooling this wide receiver room if they had him as a concrete staple in their plans. It feels like they're not going to kick him to the curb, but he's not going to get any preferential treatment because of his draft position based on the fact that he wasn't drafted by this head coach. So you could say competition will bring the best out of them, but if you're not getting reps, it's going to be hard for you to develop. We've seen a textbook case of a second round draft pick wide receiver that gets lost through the cracks with coaching changes and regime changes right here on our roster. And that's none other than Terrace Marshall Jr. Terrace Marshall Jr. was drafted by Matt Rule when Joe Brady was the offensive coordinator. He had that background with Joe Brady from their time with that legendary LSU offense. So it felt like it was a pick that was heavily influenced by him. But once Joe Brady was let go, it felt like Terrace Marshall Jr. was in Matt Rule's doghouse. We really did not get to see extended Terrace Marshall Jr. until Rule was fired and Steve Wilkes gave him a chance down the stretch after a Robbie Anderson trade. Terrace Marshall Jr. definitely showed some flashes throughout that stretch, but once Frank Reich came in with his system the following year, he got the short end of the stick yet again. And so this is a big fall from grace from a guy that was traded up into the second round in the 2021 draft. And he was even allowed to seek a trade last year because he had so many days where he was just a healthy scratch in the game because the team just didn't want to use him. And it was a humbling experience because he found no offers out on the market and he still remains a Panther to this day. Terrace Marshall Jr. was an uber talented player, just never got a fair shake because he was nobody's favorite after Joe Brady got let go. And he kind of just got passed by and overlooked time and time again. And so going into year two, it's hard to write off Jonathan Mingo and say that, but if they bring in a talented rookie wide receiver or two that they feel is a little bit more along the lines of what they want to do, they may end up getting preferential treatment and reps from Jonathan Mingo. And of course, like I said, this could bring out the best in him and light a fire under him, and he ends up turning and developing into exactly what the prior regime thought he could be, but it's hard to ignore the writing on the wall at this point. I think it would be wise to at least keep him around for the Carolina Panthers and see what he can do, give him a chance to really take some reps and show that he can be a factor, because if you look at that wide receiver list that I showed you, him and Adam Thielen are the only two wide receivers who are set to be under contract through the year 2025. So until they figure out what they're going to do at this moment, because they could end up extending Deontay Johnson. Of course, if they take one or two rookies, they'll be around as well, but you just never know what can happen in the future going forward. So having a second round pick on a rookie deal that you think is a developmental guy that has some upside, I think is honestly nice to keep him at least in the back pocket, regardless if you felt like he might have been overdrafted by the last regime. You guys let me know down below in the comments, how do you feel about Jonathan Mingo and what do you think his fate is? Do you think he ends up lost by the wayside like Terrace Marshall Jr., or do you think he's going to step his game up this year and play to the fact that they're going to have to put him on the field? I want to get you guys' thoughts down below. Let me know how you feel. But without further ado, my name is Aaron Duncan here, signing off with the Necessary Bluntness Sports Talk. I'll see you next time. Peace. My name is Aaron Duncan. Thank you so much for watching the video. If you want to see more NFL content and Panthers content, make sure you hit the subscribe button down below and the bell icon, or check out one of these videos on the screen, click around, and check out the next one in the series. All right? I'll see you in the next video. Peace.